And I'm going to hand over to Salita, who's going to be our first speaker. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Alana. My name is actually Sky. Cialita is just the pseudonym I use on media because I'm applying for some visas at the moment. So most of my friends know me as Sky. Thanks, Alana. This is a really, really interesting topic tonight, and I really feel very, very grateful that Alana invited me to take part. In Plant People South Africa, it is my first time at one of these events because I actually just got back from Peru about 2 months ago. I've been in the jungle now for the last 4 years straight and 5 years outside of South Africa, and so I've missed all these events, so I'm quite excited to start being able to take part of them. And crazy that I get to be the topic of the first one I'm attending. Just a little bit of a background about me. I was born and raised in Lanseria, a barefoot, nature-crazy wild child, and I came to plant medicine mostly through my mother over here. And she tended and grew a beautiful plant medicine garden and a herb garden while I was growing up. There was always plant medicine books going around the house, and that was kind of how I got my introduction. A few years later, her and some of her witchy friends started a company and doing plant medicine, and that was kind of my first introduction to making plant medicines and taking part in harvesting them and growing them. It was a really, really beautiful process. And one of the women who was in her team was a traditionally trained Sangoma. And so I was, witness to all these amazing little processes, and she was always giving me all these tales about spirits and plants and telling me about the ancestors, and I was just my inner dreamer, my inner witch was enthralled. And so that was kind of the beginning of my process. Fast forward a couple of years, and I entered into a bit of a existential anxiety around puberty because of a number of different events, and it was mostly some existential crisis around my own mortality and kind of this kind of vacuum of meaning that was being reflected to me from the way that most of us live our lives. I knew there was something more. I could feel that there was more to the day-to-day living, but it wasn't being reflected to me, and I was going through a bit of a crisis about that. Again, fast forward a few years, ended up at 17 years old. I used the money from my grandmother's inheritance to fly to Peru and do my first ayahuasca retreat. And needless to say, it was one of the most powerful experiences of my life. It answered many questions, it gave me many, many more, and it set me on a lifelong path of plant medicine healing, as well as a path of personal growth and self-realization, actualization. Again, fast forward a few years after studying a bunch of other modalities and plants, I decided that I wanted to deepen my practice, and so at the beginning of 2011 I left South Africa to return to the Amazon, and that's where a really, really deep process began. I arrived midway through 2011 after working on some ships to raise some money, and when I arrived there, I ended up volunteering at multiple different healing centers of ayahuasca. I got to experience my first plant diet with a shaman of the Watoto tradition, and then a little while later with a mestizo shaman, and then again right at the end of that year I was introduced to the Shipibo tradition. After that first introduction to the Shipibos, I had to leave again, go earn some money, and then return once again. And that was when I was offered a job at the Ayahuasca Foundation in Peru, in Iquitos. That's where I met and fell in love with my husband, and we became a team running ayahuasca healing retreats until I left in May this year. So that's a really, really brief introduction. So before I begin the topic of plant diets itself, I just want to make 2 points. One is that this topic is a really, really vast topic. I feel like I could write a book already just based on the brief experiences that I have had, and I've barely scratched the surface. Another point is that it's also a very, very personal experience. And so what I'm going to be sharing with you is my experience and my understanding. But if you were to talk to anyone else, you would get a different understanding of what plant diet is. It's very, very individual. And so that's why I'm grateful to be sharing this topic tonight with both Janine and Alana, because you're going to get different experiences from all three of us. First I'd like to just kind of clarify what a diet is. for those of you, have any of you experienced ayahuasca? Could I just see a hand? Wow. Okay. All right, so then most of you are probably familiar with the healing diet, and I think the healing diet often gets confused with the plant diet. The healing diet, if you've gone to a shaman, I would hope that the shaman said, try not to eat salt or sugar or meat or oil before you enter the ceremony. Depending on the shaman, there's more or less restrictions in that way. And that's called the healing diet, and that is not the plant diet. That's not the topic of what we're going to be talking about tonight. We don't have time to get into it, but there's many reasons for that, mostly just to make sure that your body is clean, your energy is clean, your body is able to receive the different medicines. In the Shipibo tradition, you would also follow that healing diet if you were to take any plant, not even just ayahuasca. So if you were going to be taking a medicine or a remedy for arthritis, for example, you would be asked to follow the healing diet. The topic of tonight is not healing diets though, it's plant diets. And so try not to get confused between the two. The plant diet is a little bit different. The plant diet, very different, is a process where a student of shamanism wants to engage and make a relationship with a plant, essentially the spirit of a plant, in order to receive healing, teachings, power, wisdom, knowledge from that plant. Basically, you want to make a connection, an ally with that plant, and then that relationship is what the shaman uses to do his work. And so typically, diets were not done by anyone except students of shamanism or, fully developed shamans already. And so how the diet is done is that a student of shamanism, and a student of shamanism can come about in many, many different ways. One of the most common ways, especially in the Shipibo tradition, is through lineage. So all the shamans and the teachers that I had in the Shipibo tradition they were shamans because their fathers were shamans, or their grandfathers were shamans, and so and so. Is the mic working? Okay. I can't Thank you.
It's like, what was the new? Can't hear you.
Okay, so yeah, there's a few different ways that one kind of enters into the path of shamanism. If it's a family lineage thing, so as I mentioned, the teachers that I had, the Shipibo teachers, they all came from family lineage. So they were shamans because their father was shamans and their grandfather were shamans and so on and so forth. The Watoto shaman that I did my first diet with came about it in a totally different way, which is very similar to how our sangomas become sangomas. And that he got very ill, he was brought near to death, and through healing himself and receiving visions and dreams through that process, he knew that he was being called to that path. So that's another very common way to do it. And then a third way is more common nowadays, which is just like, I want to be one. I feel pulled to that path, and so I'm going to do it. Whichever way you come to shamanism, the way to do it in ayahuasca is to now begin the process of plant diets. And so plant diet, you're going to go either totally on your own, this is the traditional way, this is the old way, into the jungle by yourself, into isolation, or if you are from a lineage, you would go with your teacher, your grandfather, or whoever is guiding you through the process. And you would separate yourself totally from your community. So you would go deep into the jungle, into a place where no one is going to see you. And you're going to choose your plant that you want to learn from. So if you're doing it on your own without guidance, how that plant is chosen is also up to various different things. Maybe you have an intuition or a pull to learn from a specific plant, or maybe you got a dream. The plant came to you in a dream or a vision and was like, hey, I want you to be my student, diet me. Or if you come from a lineage, maybe your teacher chooses the plant for you. Again, depending on what path you're on, the length would be determined by either yourself or through visions or indications, or your teacher would tell you how long to diet for. And so what would happen is these guys would go out into the jungle, and back in the day, it was for a really, really long period of time. So nowadays, it's typical to do like a diet for a week or a month or maybe even a couple of months. But back then, it was 6 months, 1 year, 10 years, or up to 20 years. Totally isolated from your community, no contact with anyone unless you're under the guidance of a teacher. Then you would have intermittent contact with your teacher. only to receive guidance or instruction. And so that these guys would go out, and one of the reasons for the total isolation is that the process of connecting with a plant is a difficult one. And it was often said when I was attending lectures with the sheep people, that, well, this path, it's got to make a great sacrifice to be on this path. This is no joke. This is not a path for sissies, basically. And he said it was tough. It was tough to be a shaman. It was, it sounds quite like cool, but it's difficult. You are going to have to go through a lot of tests and a lot of difficulties, give up a lot of comforts in order to make the connections with those plants. So one of the reasons for not being in contact with people is that when you're around people, we externalize our energy a lot. Also, the process of being in the diet, you're very open, and you want your energy to be very, very clear. You want to be able to drop in really deeply so that you can start to make the connection with the plants. The plants are really subtle. For a similar reason, you also would undergo a lot of dietary restrictions. So typically these guys, especially the old school guys, were eating like water and then green plantains, and then every now and then this really very not tasty bony fish called a boca chico. And that's it. Sometimes once a day, sometimes once every 3 days. Really hardcore fasting. No salt, no sugar, no oil, no meat, nothing sweet, not even sweet fruit, not even sweet vegetables, for up to 20 years. Those were the really, really old school guys. I've never heard of anyone doing it 20 years. The longest I've heard of nowadays is 5 years, and that's still really intense. So they would undergo these intense observations in order to become extremely subtle. And then, so that's kind of like the process to create the environment or the soil, you could say. And then what they would do is, while they were fasting, they would drink a preparation of whatever plant they were choosing to learn from. So let's say, for example, they want to learn from lavender. They would make a preparation of lavender morning and night, and they would have nothing in their stomachs, and they would just consume this lavender. And after a few days of consuming the lavender, they could start to eat again, but only from that very, very bland, limited diet. And then they would spend their entire time focusing on the plant. So the idea is that they would come in with, a really sincere, heartfelt intention to build a relationship with that plant. And that's a really, really big point. You can't do a diet and then be like, I can't wait for this to be over. 9 days to go, 10 days to go, 8 days to go, 5 days to go. Wish I had that cake. But the idea is that you really, really focus your intention, and the idea is that what you're giving up is enjoy, because what you're going to be getting is a connection to a spirit, to a plant that is going to not only enrich your life, but allow you to do really, really beautiful work. And so the idea is to kind of get into an attitude of giving up with joy and willingness. And then through that process, during the day and through the night, you are supposed to kind of get into a very one-pointed, focused mind, kind of like a monk during mindfulness meditation. But instead of focusing on your breath, for example, you're focusing on this plant. So you would sit with the plant, smell the plant, touch the plant, taste the plant, rub it on you, put it on your body, breathe into the plant, do whatever you can, whatever practice you can think of to connect yourself to this plant. And then the idea is that through all these practices, you've created this environment, and now the plant is viewed as this being much more than how we typically view it. It's more than just a set of chemicals. Like when we want to become a herbalist these days, you just learn the chemical properties. But these guys have a totally different approach to plants. Plants are not just material beings with some chemicals that fix this problem and fix that problem. They're living beings, they're intelligent beings, and they're also multi-dimensional beings. And so this is a process of learning and gaining knowledge of these plants, because also back in this day, there's no scientists to test the properties of the plants. There's no pharmacies, there's no doctors. These guys are the doctors. These were the pharmacies. Until 100 years ago, the Shipibos only in 1940 allowed themselves to be exposed to Western culture. So until that time, they were only using plants to heal themselves. And this was the process. This is how they learned. what plants were good for what, and not just physically, but also on various different levels. And yeah, so through this process, they would start to make the connection with the plant. And the idea is that as the plant started to connect to you, they would create almost like an energetic root system through your energy body. And so you can imagine the diet, the actual physical like restrictions of not eating certain things, the not being in contact with people creates this ideal rich soil. Then you're drinking the plant extract, that's almost like planting the energetic seed, and with your intention and your constant heartfelt sincerity and willingness and openness to connect with that plant, you start to grow that energetic seed inside your own body. And what happens is that this plant starts to create these roots, these energetic roots through your energy system. And that system will get as developed depending on each individual. You could diet the same plant for 20 years, like some of them do, and get a really developed energetic system throughout your whole body. Or you could diet for 1 week and you could get a few little roots here and there, whatever. Just very subtle. How much energy you put into it, how deep the connection goes is really very personal. It's up to you, and it looks different for every single person. And so the idea and the point of growing this energetic system through your body is that these are the pathways that the energy of this plant can travel through when you're doing your work as a shaman. So if I went and did a diet of lavender and I put a lot of energy into it and I had a good connection, and I came out with this kind of root system in my energy body of lavender, and then I went on to do some healing work in a ceremony, for example, then the idea is that this energy, these pathways now create space for the energy of that plant to move through me when I'm doing my work. So if I enter into a ceremony and I sit in front of Alana, for example, and let's say the energy of this diet of lavender is the medicine that she needs. I've got these pathways, and now the energy of lavender can move through me, through my body, through my energetic system, through my icaros, my songs, my healing songs, and into her body. And it will create that same energy system, almost like a holographic reflection in her body. And so basically through my diet and through my songs, I am giving her a holographic reflection onto her energy body, so that the energy of lavender can now start moving through her and doing its work, doing its healing. And so the healing work isn't the shaman, it's the shaman who's grown all these networks through his diets, and now that shaman has the ability to hold the frequency of that particular plant. And every single plant has its own qualities and its own healing abilities. And so some plants are dieted specifically for the purpose of protection, for example. So there's a really big tree called Lapuna, or another tree, for example, Ayauma, and the shamans will diet that tree and grow that network for protection. And its sole function is like to protect the shaman during the ceremonies energetically, or if a person is feeling attacked or something's going on, you would sing the song of Ayauma to protect that person. Or if you did a diet of a plant, for example, called Marusa. Marusa is a really, really beautiful plant in the Shipibo tradition, and she's known as like a doctor for all ills. And she's got a very, very feminine presence, and she's one of my favorite and strongest diets. And she, her system is for healing particularly nervous disorders. So if someone comes down to me probably with like arthritis or something, Parkinson's, and I sat in front of them in a ceremony, most likely, it's quite a spontaneous process, so I can't say that this is the plant that would come up, but likely that is the energy that would come through in my song. That would be the holographic energetic imprint through my songs that would be put onto Alana to heal that particular illness. So it's a really, really interesting and beautiful process, and very, very powerful. I feel like of all the things that I learned down there, I went down there expecting to learn running ceremonies and holding all, how to use the mapacho and the agua fluida. And yes, that was a part of the process, but really the guts of the process, the real beautiful weight of the process was the plant diets. And so yeah, the shamans will use this process over many, many different times, and they'll choose all kinds of plants, and like there can be a little bit of ego in it, like, I've got more diets than you do, and yeah, I mean, do you have the special know your our diet badge? Because I do, you know, like, it does get like that. But the idea is that the more diets you have and the deeper your diets, the more kind of tools you have in your spiritual first aid box, the more medicines you have energetically to work with. Also, the diets are kind of the power behind the songs. So a lot of people who've participated in ayahuasca ceremonies, you've heard the icaros. And icaros are not just songs, pretty songs. I mean, some of them are really pretty songs, but it's the intention, the purpose behind them that carries the kind of healing weight of them. And so there's different styles of singing. I'm sure you've been exposed to some of them. But the Shipibo one, the one that I like about the Shipibos, which is unique and it's quite specific to the Shipibo tradition, is that the songs are spontaneous. So it's not like you learn this song with these words and then I'm going to sing this song in the beginning and then this song and then this song and then this song. No, it's kind of, all right, I'm going to go around the circle of participants now, and I'm going to sit in front of Alana, and when I'm in her space, without thinking about it, without planning it, my diet of Marusa comes up, and the song that comes up is spontaneous. There is no planning of words, there is no planning of melody, there's no planning of anything. It just comes as in response to whatever's happening in her energetic system in the moment. It's all in the moment, and that is really, really powerful in my experience. And I've sat in multiple ceremonies of multiple different traditions, and they're all beautiful and they all have their value, but that's something that I really, really liked about the Shipibo way of working with icaros, was this kind of spontaneity. For me, it feels very feminine, and it feels very shamanistic in the true essence, like a response to what's happening in that moment. Yeah, so it sounds very, very, very magical, doesn't it? It sounds kind of like, oh, my like inner child loves this stuff, you know. But I feel like I would be doing everyone a disservice if I wasn't showing you the other side of the coin. And so yeah, this is a process. This process of dieting is what doctors do. Curanderos or shamans are doctors, that's what they are. I think a lot of us in the West have this kind of idea or illusion that that shamans are these gurus or enlightened people. They're not. I've been there for 4 years. I can tell you they're not. They're just, you know, doctors that are really, really good at working with energy. And so there's two reasons to diet in the Shipibo tradition. The Shipibos are kind of recognized as some of the best doctors that there are in terms of shamanic medicine down there. But from that same tradition of Shipibo comes the best brujos, the best black magic practitioners. And how do black magic practitioners get their power? Through dieting as well. And so a lot of people are like, what? I thought drinking ayahuasca and studying plants automatically made you more enlightened. Well, it doesn't. If you spend any time down there, in Iquitos especially, you'll become aware of two sides of this coin. There's that side, which I already discussed, which is this magical side of dieting plants and getting energy and learning to work with things. It's just amazing, you know. It's kind of like being in a fantastical world. But at the same time, there's the guys that go in and they do these plant diets in order to get energy to cause trouble for people. They create illness. And so when a black magic practitioner creates illness, that person will go to a shaman, a doctor, to heal that illness. And when that doctor tries to heal that illness, that black magic practitioner doesn't like that. And so will attack that doctor. And so that doctor now has to learn how to diet, not just to heal people, but also to protect himself. And in some cases, defend himself. And so it's actually a little bit like World of Warcraft down there. It's a little bit crazy, and that's the honest truth. I think a lot of us come in there thinking it's all like love and light, but I think that we live in a kind of a dualistic world. I mean, ultimately, I think that everything is one and non-dual and perfect. But relatively, this is the truth. This is what's happening down there. And so I say this because I feel like when people read about diets and they hear about dieting process, they get very excited and they go in with a lot of illusions. But it's important to be realistic about the person that you're going to choose to diet with or learn dieting from, because not everyone is a good person down there. And a lot of people are doctors and brewers at the same time. So that was just like a really interesting discovery for me to have down there. A lot of illusions came crashing down. I was like, what? But that guy's got 50 diets and he's drunk ayahuasca 1,000 times. What do you mean he is an alcoholic and, abuses girls? Like, that doesn't make sense. And it was a really, really powerful realization for me to come to, that it's your intention and how you direct and how you work with that diet energy that is important. And so I feel like the dieting process is very, very important for anyone who's drinking ayahuasca, especially over a long-term period, or anyone who wants to learn how to work with this medicine deeper. But you have to be realistic about yourself. And one of the things that I feel like is missing in that tradition is awareness and emotional intelligence. Not in all of them, but in a lot of people down there. So yeah, very, very important thing to bring in. So that's a kind of like backdrop around the traditional diets, and I just want to demonstrate quickly from the tapestries of the Shipibos. So this is a traditional Shipibo tapestry, and really, really beautiful. These lines that you see,
Put it up a bit higher.
these black lines, those are the lines of the diets. The Shipibos say that when you do diets, the plants create those lines in your energy body, and they use those lines to travel on your songs, and it's those lines that will be holographically reflected onto the body of your patient to do the work. And these are also the lines of Icaros. So for example, when you sing, the idea is that your song, when it's empowered by a diet, will create these patterns all over the room, and that the plants will travel along those patterns to your patients. Yeah, really, really beautiful. So they say that when you've done a lot of diets, your body, your energetic body is just like covered in these designs. And those are the designs that the plants use. So yeah, based on what I was just saying about the awareness and thank you. Yeah, thanks. So here again, this is an interesting one because I focus a lot on dieting flowers in particular. My teacher made this one for me, and it's just showing that the energy that I use when I sing is flower energy. So it's the designs of flower designs. Thank you. So I feel like, for me in particular, while dieting has been like a really, really powerful process for me in a lot of levels, my partner and I, as I mentioned, started to kind of realize that there was a bit of a disconnect between these incredible skills that shamans had to work with people and to heal people, or in some cases to cause harm to people, and the way that they were living their day-to-day lives. And so I've worked with and seen and sat in ceremony with some amazing shamans who've got lots of diets, and their energetic skills and ceremony would blow you away. Sitting in ceremony with them has been really, really potent, and they've managed to bring a lot of energy of plants into myself and to the people around. But then, like I said, you kind of like hang out with them during the day, and they're not quite the same. It seems to be like they're not quite integrated, is what I want to say. This is not for all shamans. I'm just talking about the kind of scene that's arrived in ayahuasca now, and I feel like it's really, really important to highlight this. And so my partner and I are on this path, and we really, really want to learn how to help people and to heal people, but we're also on the path of personal growth and self-realization. And so this dieting process that I just described to you, this traditional dieting process, the essence of it, the guts of it was so beautiful and so profound for us, but we felt like it wasn't quite meeting all of our needs as it is. And so we decided to take kind of the essence and the guts of that process and kind of evolve it to meet our own specific needs of personal growth. And so what we've been doing for the last 2 years, which for me has been one of the most, I can't tell you what a difference it's made to my life, is we've kind of engaged this standard and traditional dieting process, but evolved it a little bit. And so what we do is, instead of just dieting the plants with the focus of growing these energetic networks, we also engage in specific practices to cultivate certain qualities that we would need to hold space for people. And so, running retreats for as long as we have, you kind of really get down to the guts with people about some of their most personal and sensitive issues in their life. And I myself didn't feel comfortable counseling or talking with people about those issues without having looked at my own shit, without having done the work, the shadow work in particular. And that is what we felt was the disconnect between the kind of traditional shamanistic approach and where we wanted to be. Where they are is great, they serve exactly what they need to where they are, but we wanted something a little bit different. And so we started to include other practices in our diet, in our traditional diet. Some of those practices were, for example, sexual qigong. The reason for that is that there's a lot of people who do a lot of diets, and down there in the ketos, like tons of people are doing diets, but there's also a lot of really not cool behavior around sex and sexuality. And we felt that was because in this tradition there's a lot of suppression of sex. They're like, you're not supposed to have sex when you do ayahuasca, you're not supposed to have sex when you do diets, but what do you do with that energy? That energy's still there, it's still natural, and I feel like maybe in the past there could have been some practices for working with that energy consciously, but nowadays I certainly didn't get taught any, and I don't know anyone else that did. And I think that's partly the reason that we're seeing such a lot of sexual misbehavior in Iquitos and within the scene itself. And so we were like, okay, there's clearly a disconnect here. So what can we do to try and not allow that to happen to us? And so we started to do conscious sexual qigong practices to help move that energy. Another thing that we felt was that there wasn't a lot of emotional awareness in a lot of healers out there. There's a lot of people who've done a lot of diets, and they've done a lot of interesting things, and they've got a lot of kind of like spiritual power, but they don't seem to be very self-aware, especially about their own shit. And I'm certainly no exception to that, but we wanted to like actively work on that. So we started including all kinds of other practices into our dieting process to make it a little bit more suited to our present needs. And yeah, so it's been a really, really beautiful experience. I feel like since I've started to diet, especially in between all the retreats that I did, I was able to better hold space for people. Before, when I wasn't dieting, I would go into a retreat, and after 1 or 2, 3 retreats in a row, I'd be exhausted. I would be emotionally exhausted, energetically exhausted. My songs would not have any power behind them. And then we started to do this regular, short, isolated diets in between all our retreats, and that went away. My energy levels went up. My ability to sing was a lot better. Another thing that I noticed was kind of an energetic cleansing, or a cleansing of psychic tension. So when you're holding space for people all the time and giving of yourself all the time, it's part and natural of the work to pick up a lot of that energy. And you kind of can get confused a little while after what's yours and what's not yours, and weighted, and start manifesting symptoms of other people's problems, even though it's not your stuff. I started to notice that was happening. That also, as soon as we started dieting, that problem went away. Another thing that happened was increased creativity. I started to feel like the plants were giving me inspiration for art, for poetry, for singing, all kinds of things. One of the biggest things I noticed once I started doing regular diets was the singing. The singing took on a whole new level, and what I was describing as spontaneous singing. I kind of let go of all set songs and ideas of how things should be sung, and I completely jumped into that spontaneous style, which was very, very, very powerful for me. And then one of the most powerful things for me in particular was that I started to get called by specific plants. And so the Shipibo tradition does not have a tradition of dieting flowers at all, but I got a strong calling to start working with flowers, and flowers only. And it was kind of appropriate because at that time, just before the flowers started to call me, I put out this prayer to start working more consciously with the feminine, because that's another thing that's quite suppressed out in Iquitos in Peru. The feminine, you wouldn't think so, but it is very, very suppressed, and women are often treated badly or dominated or treated as nothing at all. And so it was very, very difficult for me to be down there as long as I was. My male peers were, being treated totally different to how I was. And so the flowers kind of like really came in, and they were like, don't worry about that, and come with us. And they kind of take over as my teachers. And that was really, really beautiful for me as well. And so another thing that happened was that I kind of stepped out of the more traditional paradigm and into my own energy. And I started to realize that the plants are actually the teachers. The shamans, they're very, very amazing. They've got a lot of skills. I really think that it's very important when you first start dieting to start with a shaman. But the shaman is also just kind of a bridge to help and teach you how to connect on your own. You have that already. You don't really need anyone else. They're just kind of like helping you in the beginning. Like, don't go down that path because you might get stuck. They've got that a little bit of experience and they can help you out. But once you have that and you know how to do that, it's your connection to the plants, and nobody else can or should mediate that. And so that was kind of a really, really powerful step for me as well, as stepping out of the umbrella and into my own path, taking control of my own path. So yeah, that is the guts of it. I have a lot more to say, and if anyone wants to talk more, then I'm happy to chat to you guys afterwards. Thank you very, very much.
So it's my first time presenting to a class, so excuse me if I fumble over the words. Question. Okay.
Sure thing. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
No. There. Yeah. Okay. So I went to the jungle earlier this year to embark on my ayahuasca initiation. And one of the first concepts that was brought to our awareness down there was the importance of the diet. Really early on in this experience, it dawned on me the importance. It dawned on me that this initiation was not so much about learning the preparations of ayahuasca or conducting the ceremony, but more so about cultivating the diet energy within myself. I realized then the diet energy, the diet really, is the most important aspect of being a shaman, a curandera. In Peru, there are different kinds of shamans. You have your tabacaeros, your ayahuasqueros, your sogorodors, which is a healer of the bone. And the one thing that connects all of these shamans is they all have their diets. My first diet, which was with Noyorao tree, began with a fast. A setting of intentions and making of a covenant between myself and this plant spirit I wish to befriend. And just to give a brief introduction of Noyorao, really, she's a wonderful, beautiful energy that allows you to connect to the divine, to the angelic realms, and she brings through many other plant beings. So it's a very powerful diet, important diet to have. And all four of the shamans that you know of, Lucas and Johan and myself and Sky, we've all done this Noyorao diet. It's a very beautiful diet. It's important to fast while we're taking in Noyorao, as we're dealing with very subtle energies. And it's somewhat disrespectful to take in any other substance other than water or medicine while you're taking in Noyura. And for every day on the fast, every day we're fasting, we're given a full cup of a tea color infusion, bark infusion of Noyura. The fast would end 12 hours after drinking the last Noyura infusion, and continue on a meal plan that we understand as the ayahuasca diet, or as Sky referred to as the healing diet. The diet would also continue as a personal practice of contemplation and introspection. We were encouraged to fast as much as we could to make the most opportunity to take in Noyura. And the dietary practice is a demonstration of our personal sacrifice. It's like a gift to the plant spirit, and in turn, the plant spirit will gift us with her energy. At first, when I first began this diet, it was very hard to notice any changes in me. And you start thinking, nothing's happening, this is crazy. But as time goes by, the energy becomes stronger and more distinct. And to a point where immediately after I drink Noyura, I start feeling your energy. And it feels somewhat like being a little bit tipsy in the sun, a little bit drunk on life. And during my time there, over 6 weeks, Noyura's energy would wash over me in random moments of the day. I had 2 occasions where I received full-on visions, and 1 occasion where her energy lifted me out of my body in an astral projection experience. And all of these happened without the influence of ayahuasca. My strongest connection came through my dreams. I'm a dreamer. That's my ability to connect to plants. And after exploring this concept with our maestro, Don Enrique, it became apparent to me that I had been dreaming of Noyura long before I arrived in the jungle. So this really demonstrates to me that if a plant spirit wants to be your ally, it will find a way to reach you. In the Shipibo tradition, ayahuasca requires energetic pathways to reach into the subconscious level, to reach into the corners of your shadow self in order to enable the deepest healing. These pathways are depicted in the art, as Sky showed you, and I also brought one. Yeah, so beautiful. And these pathways are also created in the shaman's diet. In the past, only the shaman would drink in ceremony, so it's not necessary for the participants of the ceremony to have a diet in order to receive the deepest healing, but it is crucial for the shaman to have a diet energy, because the power and strength and healing ability of the shaman is directly coming through his diet. Apart from these a very powerful aspect of lending the pathways to the participants in the ceremony, as the diet energy grows, so does the shaman's ability to master his merision, which is an understanding of the energy that comes through in ayahuasca. It's like a stream current that, if you're able to master it, it's firm and straight, and you're able to be alert and awake in ayahuasca. You're able to navigate both earthly and heavenly realms within the ceremony. The diet energy also allows you to sing with power and conviction, which is quite important in the process. It becomes your ally in and out of ceremony, which the plant conveys its teachings to you. And what happens quite often is it gives you spiritual gifts, which can vary from person to person. I had the privilege to assist Lucas in his ceremonies before I went to the jungle. and before I started my first diet. And I've been working with him since I've been back. And the difference in my ceremony experience since I've been back is remarkable, since I've begun the diet. It's given me a strength to sing loud and clear, where before it was quite tricky. It took a lot of effort to sing and to be present in the ceremony, because the ayahuasca energy would just sway you about and you'd want to collapse and continue in your own journey. The diet energy is also a spiritual assistant, if you will. It feels like a constant presence by my side. Energetic support guiding my thoughts, my visions, my actions. And when my diet energy sings through me, it gives my voice an angelic quality that I've only ever heard when I've been singing in my dreams. Maintaining of a diet is a lifelong commitment. It's incredibly challenging and rewarding. In the jungle, I once had a dream that Noyeral was up a hill, and between myself and Noyeral were these many staircases and rivers, and she refused to come down to me. She wanted me to go up to her, and so I embarked on this journey of traveling along these staircases, swimming through these rivers, and many obstacles in the way, and I became exhausted and I wanted to give up, but I kept going, and eventually I reached her and I got sucked up a tube, which was almost like I was being given birth to the inside of her. And when I was inside her, the spirits in her gave me flower water, mapacho, and an energy chip, and told me about the fight between light and dark. And then I had to go out and continue battling the zombies. It's quite a fantastical dream. This lifelong commitment on an inward personal level is about overcoming obstacles of negative beliefs and negative behaviors. It's to never give up, no matter how hard, how dark and tiring things may get. And on an outward expressive level, it's putting into practice the teachings that the diet energy brings you, fulfilling the role of a shaman, being in service to people in the ceremony and out of ceremony. In the jungle, I was told that when one first embarks on a diet, this diet energy is like a newly sprouted seedling, and pale green and delicate, and we must take great care to cultivate and allow a space for this energy to grow within us, holding the space of love, being present and compassionate with the darkness that may arise within us and around us, avoiding expressions of anger, lust, greed, hatred, and at the same time continually contemplating the beautiful energy growing within us. And after many years, this little thing grows into a colossal powerhouse. I've only just started my diet, so my diet is still a baby, and this is really depicted to me through my dreams. Every single one of my diet dreams are about either me being pregnant or me having a newborn baby. My last diet dream I had about 3 weeks ago. I was heavily pregnant and pacing around the fire with a massive eucalyptus tree next to me. Now, the eucalyptus tree is understood as a cousin or relative to Noyerau. This beautiful tree also connects you to divine and strong energies. So I think that might be my next diet. And so this tree was there. And I was frightened about the process ahead. So I started praying to Noyerau, asking her to please give me guidance, give me strength and courage to face the difficulties ahead. And in answer to my prayer, she sent 3 sages, one of them an ancient Qigong master, one of them a Hindi tantric sage, and the last one older native medicine woman. And these 3 people were going to help me in the birthing process. So the chanting and the pacing on the fire continues, the labor pains get really intense, And then just before I wake up out of this dream, this angelic voice whispers in my ear, your birthing process has been delayed, and you have more time, use it wisely. And Sky pointed out the other day that perhaps it's got to do with the stages. I need to practice the Qigong and the Tantra and really find my medicine woman roots, to cultivate my diet energy further. Although I still have a long way to go with this dietary practice, through this experience I've found deep healing and completion in my life, deep forgiveness and compassion for myself and others, and a powerful, real connection to the Creator. And I can't express in words the gratitude I feel for my dear friend Norirao. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Janine. I'm going to try and not talk so loud because the microphone is on loud and I've got a very big voice. Alright, so I'm going to share a little bit about my dieta, which was a different one. I've recently just completed what's known as an open dieta. So there's two types of dietas that you can undergo, and I think the better known one is the dieta when you go into the jungle or you go into wilderness and you isolate yourself. And I really wish that I had been able to do that, because I think an open dieta is quite hard, really tough. So I had to do my dieta in maybe the biggest jungle of all, the concrete jungle. And so what a dieta involves, first of all, just to give you a bit of practical insight, is a very restrictive diet, first of all. And one of the reasons you might want to do a dieta is in 3 weeks I've lost 6 kilos, which was quite nice. But the interesting thing is because I'm actually the way I eat is not that different to the dieta, which is interesting. But what the dieta does involve giving up is salt, sugar, any oils, any spices, and I don't eat animal products anyway, so it wasn't that different for me, except it was a diet with absolutely no flavour and no tea and no coffee, and the coffee was hard. But I actually realised how good it was for me to give that up. And I think I can actually now torture people with food, because I think my biggest winner was chickpea and kale soup with no salt. I really do not recommend chickpea and kale soup without salt. And I made a big pot and I had to eat it for a week. That was really good. Yeah, that was a winner. It was a real winner. Yeah. But there's definitely a certain humility that comes from eating very simple food. And it's a practice I've really come to love. It's fasting. The interesting thing, like I was saying, is that it wasn't so much that I was depriving myself of food, and I was just losing weight. And the thing with the dieta is it forces you to surrender. So you're working with a specific plant that you've chosen as a teacher, and it's about surrendering to that teacher. So an open dieta is something that we can manage with our lifestyles, and it's important to understand that a dieta is possible with our lifestyles. So you can work, you can hold down a job, you can work from 9 to 5, and then you go into silence afterwards. And then if possible, try to not work on a Friday. And you need to be in isolation Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, in complete and utter isolation. So I did this for 3 weeks. Not all dietas need to be so long, but if you can, it's good. So I'd like to share a little bit with you about what my dieta was all about. Also, during this time, you can't touch anyone. which is quite challenging if you're quite a touchy-feely person. Yeah, but let me tell you a little bit about what my experience was about, and also I'm going to share with you afterwards why it is we're doing this talk right now, why it's so important that we're doing this talk right now. So I've got 2 books in my hand. These are my journals. The impression that they have a Native American Indian living in the complex, because there was a lot of singing. And the songs that come out of you are really quite beautiful. You know, Icaros, the songs that the medicine teaches you, you know, it opens you up. And the experience of that song is something quite indescribable. It really is quite beautiful. It's something, if you can connect to medicine in that way, it's really, really beautiful. Alright, so I'm opening up the first book, Be Warned. The first thing I want to say is a dieta is traditionally opened and closed by a shaman. And I've got so much incredible gratitude for the shaman and teacher that I was working with, who really got me through some really, really tough times. And he's not in this country, and we would communicate online. So it was the only person that I would really speak to much over this period. And what I'd really like to do is just share some of the teachings and some of the lessons that I learned over this time. I'm not going to take too much of your time, but I just want to share with you my experience of Dieta and why I believe it's so important that each and every one of us needs to experience a Dieta at some stage of our lives. The first thing about a Dieta is learning to surrender. So I wasn't working with a high dose of medicine, and I'm not going to actually mention the medicine that I was working with. What's also interesting is a week before the Dieta began, I started to dream of the medicine. I started to dream of the medicine, and I dreamt I was sleeping underneath canopies of this particular plant. So it's interesting how intelligent and how you connect to these medicines. They come to you, and they want to align with us. But you know, our minds have other intentions for ourselves, and my mind was extremely busy. It was as though for 3 weeks I was dieting chaos. I really felt I was dieting chaos. And in the days that I was working my job, I'd often try and really, I was working hard, and unfortunately I had to on certain days, and I collapsed on a number of occasions, and I had to actually just accept that I had to surrender. I had no choice but to surrender. I had no control, and you've got to respect the plant. So, you know, if you're going to do an open dieta, try to do it at a period when you're not that busy, and try to not overdo things, because these plants demand respect. And yeah, we're not in control, and that's one of the lessons is we may think we're in control, but we're not. And it's a lesson about, it's not that the plants are in control, it's just that we're not really in control of anything. It's surrendering to that which is bigger than us. Alright, so just to share with you some little things. One of the first messages I received, I went into a vision state, and I met a version of myself that shouted at me, "Why are you afraid of yourself?" And that's how it began. And then the chaos began. And then for 3 weeks I didn't sleep. I didn't sleep the whole time during this dieta. And it was like I had to deal with these racing thoughts, which is quite unusual for me, because I'm normally someone who can go into quite deep presence and silence within myself. But it was necessary, it was really necessary that I had to listen, and I had to face this racing chaos inside myself. And, you know, I entered this dieta with an expectation and with an intention. And the problem was that intention became an expectation. And this is something that I really need to start taking my own advice. It's something I so often tell people, don't let your intention become an expectation, but that's exactly what happened to me. And I ranted and I raved and I was like, why am I not connecting with this medicine? Why am I not connecting with this medicine? And I actually had to realize that it was my expectation that was getting in the way. And I received some very wise words from my teacher, and what he said to me was, expectations were preventing me from accepting what is with the possible grace with which it could be accepted. And I wasn't actually noticing what was happening, because I was so obsessed with the outcome that I had in mind that I actually wasn't realizing what was taking place. So my intention was to connect with this medicine, and I had this idea in terms of how it would take place, but I didn't actually realize that what the medicine was teaching me was how to heal myself and how to be a better healer. And at one point, I was realizing that it was opening up certain things in me. And I mentioned this to my teacher, and he said to me, this is the healing you actually need, and the diet is just a vehicle that allows you to see it clearly. So it's not what we want it to be. The medicine doesn't give you what you want, but the one thing the medicine will always give you, it will always give you what you need. And what the Dieta really was for me, it was a 3-week-long ceremony. A 3-week-long ceremony. And it was probably one of the most profound and deep experiences of my life. And to the point that I'm now going to make dieting a really regular event. In fact, if I can do it once a month, I will do so, because that experience has been so profound and so important and so precious. I'd like to just read you a little extract from my journal, because I think it gives you a good insight into what a dieta is possibly about, and I think why it's important that we enter these spaces. I need more hands. All right. As time stretched before me, I felt for once I had too much time on my hands instead of too little. You've got 3 weeks alone, it really does become too much. And yet the moments and their value were deepening as I found myself becoming increasingly more present. And I found myself being able to be completely here, and I was with my animals. And what I was noticing was that my relationship with them was changing, and how they were responding to me completely differently too. And it's become even more critical for me to be completely present in the company of sentient beings who share my space. Because if I'm not completely present, I'm not acting in integrity. And in order to achieve this, I need to first of all be completely present for myself. My racing thoughts have been an incredibly torturous obstacle I've had to overcome, and the only way I've managed to bring some sort of form of silence or stillness is by confronting everything deep within me that I'd ultimately been avoiding, things I didn't even know were there. And whilst some wounds that I've now scratched open and brought to the surface to be re-examined may take a while to heal, the illness that was in them, that was in me, is coming to light. And this is a process that I've realized needs to be followed regularly if I am to have any integrity with who I am and with those around me. So a very large part of this diet has been forcing myself to slow down and to surrender my control not only over my time but over my mind. To surrender that I cannot obliterate the thoughts that I want to avoid, nor can I cause the ceaseless chatter inside me to quieten, but I need to figure out what it is inside me that needs to be heard. And I think, one of the biggest parts of this dieta was the realization that the internal noise within us we need to give it an ear, we need to listen, and we need to create time and space for ourselves to go into these places where we can listen to that which is inside ourselves until the noise stops. And until we listen to that which is inside ourselves, we cannot ever truly listen to another. And that was one of the biggest teachings for myself. For if I am to have integrity as a healer, there needs to be stillness inside me. So the Dieta was not what I expected it to be, but yet it was one of the most profound experiences. And I think it's something that we all need to do. And what it is you choose to diet, maybe you choose to diet silence, maybe you choose to diet a plant. But this process of going deep into ourselves, I cannot tell you how valuable I believe it to be. So thank you for letting me share my experience with you. What I wanted to tell you is the reason why we are bringing up this topic of dietas right now in Plant People. Well, we're making dietas accessible to you. So we've got 2 international shamans who are coming to our shores soon. And we will be posting their details shortly. So you will be able to participate in dietas and you will be able to join them. So please do watch the space. So it was a very important topic for the community because it's really, it's very, very special to be able to participate with someone who has lots of experience in facilitating dietas. So please do watch the group. So that's quite exciting, and I really do hope that you do join in. And also do your own dietas. It's a very, very beautiful thing to do. I'm going to be blogging a bit. I'll be sharing my experiences. I'd like to encourage Janine and Sky to also blog and share their experiences into Plant People. And yeah, that's just to conclude on the topic of dietas.